Hi there. I thought we'd do another vlog because this seems to be the easiest way for me to do things lately, and it's been kind of fun, so hopefully you're enjoying them. But do you see that book? I have never read a Cassandra Clare before. So let's do Baby's First Cassie Clare. I basically was not in the target age range when her books were coming out by the time I learned about them. And I don't think they ever would have been something that I would have liked. Anyway, so my sisters loved them. They were obsessed, and everything they told me about them, I was like, yeah, that's not a book for me. But I got this as a gift for Christmas from my boyfriend's sister, so I thought I would give it a go. So I'm going to try to read roughly 100 pages a day for a few days. Maybe I'll read some more if I really start to like it. And I'll be checking in with you roughly every 100 pages. So let's go. Okay, 100 pages in. I'm very tired. I'm struggling because I'm finding it a little boring. I think there's some elements I'm like, okay, yeah, this is done. This has been done before. Okay, yeah, this has been done before. And it's just, I don't know, there's this progressive element in that there's a way for two kings to be married and it to be totally okay, or two queens, which apparently are rarer but still allowed. They're okay with people being gay, they're totally fine with that, but a woman cannot go to a brothel, so, or is not supposed to partake. They're allowed there, but they're supposed to sit demurely in the back and watch the men, in the parlor areas, which is weird, because if you're gonna have a world where it's okay to be gay, why are the women not allowed to use the brothels? And then the way the brothels are set up is just very standard. And maybe it's because I'm just off of Kushiel's Chosen, and I'm like, you could do more with your fantasy sex work. More with it. Yeah, they have, it's called the Temple District, because it's, they all have, an idol for a specific deity in, but I'm like, you can do more with it. So we have, okay, so we have a couple of POVs, which I wasn't expecting it to be multi-POV. So we have Kel, who is a body double essentially for the prince and for Prince Connor, and they're besties. And Kel has a couple of things he's trying to do, something about a poison. He's trying to get an antidote for a poison that he had to have a secret meeting to get, which is odd. And then the prince is supposed to be getting married, but he just really wants to go hang out with his friends in the brothel. And that's pretty much all that's happened with them in the first 100 pages, so I guess that's why I'm bored. Well, the first 35 pages was prologue. And it was little 10-year-old Connor getting brought, or 10-year-old Kel getting brought to the palace to be the body double, and then Connor convincing him at the end of the chapter. And then we have Lynn and Miriam are the other, Lynn is the POV, Miriam is her best friend. They're members of the Ashkar, which is the only race that can still use magic, but they're quartered off to specific part of the city. They're not allowed to be out at night and all this stuff. And I'm like, if you're magic users, how have you been I don't know. I'm assuming it's going to be explained, and maybe their magic isn't as powerful as I'm assuming it is, and that's why they've been able to be corralled and had all these rules put on them. But yeah, so it was 100 pages. If I keep reading this today, I'm gonna fall asleep, so I'm just gonna not for a little bit. I'm running a bit late to meet my brother, but I thought I would check in because I'm 300 pages into Swordcatcher, and it's actually picking up finally. It's taken a little bit, but it's stuff is finally happening. We have Kel and Lynn have actually met. People are doing things. It still feels really slow, and extra words just for the sake of words. There are so many extra descriptions that are unnecessary. We're getting all of these overly necessary, I keep saying necessary, descriptions of clothing and smells, and I'm like, okay, you can do a little less. I mean, it just feels like it's forced 300 pages. It still feels really YA, but at least stuff is happening now, so I'm gonna keep reading. I'm halfway through now, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so Doggo and I are gonna go for a walk, but I know I've checked in at 300 pages and I'm only 350 now, but I was having this conversation last night, and this feels so YA, and I think I'm comparing it to The Assassin's Apprentice because I'm listening to that right now and I'm almost done with it. And I just listened to Jacqueline Carey's Kushiel's Chosen, which is the second book in the series. And these are all like fantasy worlds where the characters are quite young. In Kushiel's Dart, at least, Phaedra, we start following her from when she's like 6 or 7. And Fitz, we start following him from when he's like 6 or 7. And Fitz is like right now like 15, and it doesn't feel YA because everything he's dealing with is a very adult situation. And even though he makes dumb teenage choices sometimes, he's still put in these adult situations with an adult level of responsibility put on him. And in Swordcatcher, these characters are adults. They're 23, and they're part of the, like, we have the prince and his swordcatcher who's supposed to be who's like plays off as his cousin. And then we have these children who are set to inherit these trade charters. And so they're like the royal council, like the kids of the royal council. And none of these kids have any like responsibilities. And for a high fantasy world with, well, I say kids because they act like kids. For the high fantasy world, when you have young people around the age of like 23, it makes sense that they should be having much more responsibilities. But we see them just like being drunk all the time, hosting parties all the time. It feels very much less fantasy royal court and much more fantasy rich kids. Like, they're much less rulers of a country and much more children of millionaires, CEOs' kids is essentially much more what it feels like. All the things that they're doing are so much more childish than I would expect from a high fantasy series with characters in their early 20s. It feels weird. The plot feels a little like the issues in it, like the things that the characters are up against, the like basically all of the things they're trying to stop them from, you know, succeeding in whatever it is they're supposed to be succeeding in, feels very contrived. Like it's just there for the plot's sake. So we have kind of your basic, this may be mild spoiler because I don't know if it's in the synopsis. We have like your kind of standard type of plot of like, oh, rich kid got himself in a bunch of debt and now the local crime lord has bought all of his debt and he can't tell his daddy about it and get help. So he's just getting drunk to ignore it, basically, which is putting other people in danger. That's pretty much what's happening. And we have Kel, the sword catcher, who's being like drawn into this underground to try to save the prince. And so his plot is okay, but at the same point, like, it's very slow because it's taking forever for things within that to happen. And I feel like the solutions aren't being solutioned because everyone is acting incredibly immature, when I feel like 23-year-olds in this type of world should have the political wherewithal to be able to deal with this, but they don't, and it's strange as to why. Also, these like 20-year-olds, they have to go to these like meetings, but they don't have any sort of like other responsibilities as regards to their like education or anything like that. Like the prince doesn't even have to do his weapons training anymore. He can do it if he chooses. And I'm like, this is such a weird way to set up the world where it again, it makes it feel more like these are kids of CEOs and millionaires and not kids who were supposed to be learning to run a country. And it's confusing me. So it feels like the stakes are a lot less because we don't have the stakes of the country. We just have the stakes of like they're standing in the public eye is really what is happening. Like that's like the bad thing that could happen is that the prince could lose standing in the public eye. Like, so I don't feel very worried as for him. Kel even, like, it doesn't feel like anyone's actually, the one person that was going to hurt him was like, oh, yeah, no, we weren't meant to hurt you when we tried. Like, we didn't think it was you. And I'm like, okay. I'm not worried about anybody. Like, because of what we're learning about the criminal underground and the way they operate. I'm not worried about anybody. Good morning. Quick check-in. I've got 180 pages left of this, and I thought I would check with you because, like, I still feel so YA. We're starting to get into, like, the political stuff, because this is going to be a trilogy, but I'm, like, having just read 2 very politically heavy books with, like, younger characters, thinking of Kushil's Dart and The Assassin's Apprentice. The Assassin's Apprentice was a little slower to get into the politics as the character got older, and kind of the same with Kushil's Dart, but they still got into it much sooner in the book and with much more detail. These are characters in this one that just, they feel very young and like they don't understand what's happening, which for them being in the royal court feels very odd, for them not understanding the consequences of things. And I just can't get past that. It's really bothering me. It just feels so YA instead of like written about younger characters for adults. And if it had been marketed that way, I probably wouldn't be as judgy, but this was like her first adult novel, and I'm like, okay, it feels so YA. My example is last night we had, mild spoiler, the prince got whipped by the king for fucking shit up, and this is apparently the first time it's ever happened that he's ever been punished, and he was whipped pretty badly. So Kel, the character who was viewing everything through, went to go get the magical doctor, as I've been calling Lynn, and he was explaining to Lynn what happened, and Lynn was like, did no one stop the king? And I'm like, bitch, he's the king. No, they didn't. Like, and well, why would the captain of the guard have listened to him and followed his orders? Because he's the captain of the guard and the king said to do it. Like, what are you not understanding? You live in this world, right? Like, why are you so oblivious to the way this world works? And she was like, oh, the queen couldn't do anything. And then there was like a little interaction with her and the queen, and she was like, italics to show her thought. It's like, why didn't you say anything? Was there really nothing you could do, or are you just like that lazy and incompetent? And I'm like, oh my god, like, you live in this world. So this is why I said the characters feel very young. It feels like a teenager response, not a mid-20s, I've lived in this world my whole life, this is the setting where I have to grow up faster, I should be like understanding how things work. That's why I'm like a little I've got 180 pages left. I'll finish it like today is the goal, but I'm just like, why does everyone feel so young and naive? I opened the book to realize I only have 160 pages left, so I'm pretty sure I can finish this tonight. So excited. Okay, I need to get reading if I'm going to finish this tonight. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I really hate it when books do this with excerpts from like other books in the world. I don't mind it when they work it in, like Stephen King did that in Misery, where the author was writing a book and it made sense because of what was happening in the story to have those excerpts within the story, but I don't like having them just like here to like for world building. It just feels like lazy world building, and it really bothers me whenever books do this. I know other people like it, so maybe it's an unpopular thing, but I find myself skimming them, and it's like giving me clues to some sort of mystery, and I don't know. I'd rather have it in the text itself. So, yeah. Okay, I'm confused about something. I'm confused. Every time this prince drinks out of a glass, he has to lick a drop of it off of his thumb. And I've been to a lot of college parties. I spent a lot of time in pubs when I was in the UK. I have been around people who drink a lot. I've drank a lot. I've never had to lick alcohol off my thumb. It just seems weird, especially if you have a stemmed glass, like a stemmed wine glass. I'm not understanding. And it seems like a very weird thing to constantly bring up, that the prince keeps having to lick alcohol off of his thumb. It's weird. Okay, mild spoiler. So, the prince doesn't want to get married, but he has to for political reasons. And then he has to because of the fact that he owes like 10,000 crowns to one of the underground lords, essentially, because the dude bought up all his debt. And so that's kind of the plot to get the prince into like a sticky situation. So he goes to Sarth, which is another kingdom. I think I might have mentioned this earlier today. It's another kingdom that they don't necessarily get along with very well, and agrees to marry their princess Amida, for a dowry of 10,000 crowns. So he signs this, and then the other kingdom, because they view Connor as having been dishonest, bring in their younger princess who's like 10 years old, and they're like, one of her names is also Amida. So this is who you're going to marry. And he's super upset about it. He didn't really like the like princess his age anyway, but he didn't want to get married, and now he's guaranteed to not get married for at least 8 years until she turns 18, according to what they've said here. So he basically got what he wanted. He got his money. He's not married, he's just betrothed. He's still allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants in terms of like going to the brothels and all that stuff and hooking up with people. He's just not allowed to marry anyone else, which is a situation he would have been in anyway, but he doesn't have to be married for like another 8 years. So he's kind of got a win-win situation here. I don't understand why he's so upset about it, except for that it made him look like a fool. But he's like super pissed off about it. And so we have Lynn has now come to this party where they're like introducing this princess, Louisa, and Lynn met her and she's like, that poor child. And Kel says, I hope there's pity in your heart, Kel said quietly, for the both of them. Why do we need to feel sorry for him? He's getting what he wants. He got his money. He doesn't have to marry right away. And he's made a like political match with a country that they aren't on the best terms with. This seems like a win-win. Again, this is why it feels so YA, because from like an adult perspective, he's getting what he needed and what he wanted. Where's the negative? – 40 more pages past where I started, and this book has now dropped from a 3 to a 2. Spoiler. He insults Lynn, verbally abuses her, essentially, and humiliates her in front of a crowd of people, stalks her into a hallway, corners her, and forces himself on her. And you know what she feels in that moment, instead of all the hatred that she's been feeling? Desire. I can't. I absolutely cannot. I liked her in the scene leading up to this and how she responded to things and how she dealt with it. And then when he restrains her and forcefully kisses her and she tries to fight back at him and he takes it as encouragement, she bites his lip bloody and he continues to do it. And then she finds herself desiring him in that moment because she couldn't stop him. So now she desires him. Why do we do this? Why do we write books like this? She's retelling it in her head as, instead he kissed me, then flung me away and said he must have been drunk. I'm so over it. 100 pages left. Just 100 pages. Do you know what one of my least favorite things is that authors do when they're writing in multiple POVs? It's when they start action at the end of a chapter with a character and there'll be a big reveal, some action about to happen, and then we switch to the other POV for a very boring event. And we have to go through that chapter and be expected to pay attention while just wanting to finish it up and figure out what the fuck was happening in the other one. This is the reason I hate multiple POVs. Like, I don't hate them, but I struggle to find them done well because of shit like this. Like, why start something just to make me slog through something boring after it so that I can get back to it? Just fucking finish it and then switch to your other POV. like, it drives me crazy. Okay, we're gonna do this quickly because I finished Swordcatcher last night, and I gave you a lot of updates along the way about how I was feeling about it, and like got a lot of my opinions out last night. The ending did not fix it. It's a 2.5. I was really frustrated about how the characters are very naive. It felt like they didn't really know about the world they were living in, and they were supposed to be like 23, 24, 25, somewhere around there. And it just kind of made me feel like it was originally written maybe more YA, and then the characters are just like aged up. Because like for them being part of like the noble court, they really had no like responsibilities as if they were nobles, no understanding of their responsibilities, no understanding of how the politics in the world works. There is a scene where like one of the minor spoiler, I guess, one of the main characters is shocked that someone's executed for treason, and I'm like, yeah, is treason not an executable offense in this world? Or and they're like worried about the king's mental stability because he had someone executed. He didn't do the executing. He had his like captain of the guard do the executing. So I'm still like unclear about why we're like shocked by that. I guess I don't understand, because it wasn't set up as like this is a world with no capital punishment. So that was very unclear on why. It felt like just very naive characters instead of like a shock, I think. I'm feeling very frustrated with the amount of time I spent on this book, for what little payoff I got. I'm still mad about that scene that I ranted about, because the fact that Lynn just gave in when Connor forced himself on her, she was just like, oh, well, he's attractive. I'm so attracted to him. And I'm like, you just went on a rant about how he's allowed to do anything that he wants because he's so attractive. And now you're doing that same thing. And it's just supporting that narrative that men who are attractive can't actually assault people because women want to be assaulted by attractive men. And that just, I can't with that, because it's probably I spend too much time on the internet in general, where incels are constantly saying that shit, and I hear that misogynistic bullshit all the time. It's like, oh, well, if I was attractive, I could do whatever I wanted to women. No, you can't. Like, I don't care how attractive you are. Don't fucking touch me unless I ask you. And I'm so... the fact that we're perpetuating this in this story where it was already borderline, like, with the female characters in it, because it barely passes the Bechdel test. When our main, like, two of our female characters interact, and, like, more often, and the way that they interact is to most of the time talk about the one girl wants to know how hot the prince is and about everything that goes on in the castle, and our main character Lynn, she just wants to talk about how sick her friend is. Like, there isn't a lot of depth to their, like, friendship or conversations. And then the other scenes that we get with Lynn with other female characters are, hey, where is this person at? Like, where's this man at that I need to find? Or the other woman, like, bringing her to the man. So it's like barely passing that. And it just, yeah, it just felt really weak. It was really weak, and I am not a fan. I will not be reading more from this author. This is basically about what I expected, considering the things that my siblings who like this author, they like her YA stuff, and they told me about the books and the things that I've heard other people say. I knew her YA wouldn't be for me, but I thought I would give her first adult book a chance, and I'm really disappointed that I did. I'm just glad that I didn't spend any money on this and I got it as a gift. So it's in the unhaul pile, which I'll show you because I dug it out of the garage. It's my very small unhaul pile. So, yeah, you need to donate these. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this one. Like, I know if I give it to a thrift store, they're just gonna put it up online and ask for a lot of money for it. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll see if my library needs a copy of it. That's what I'll do. I'll ask my library if they need a copy, because it's in good condition. I didn't annotate it. It's like, and it's in really good condition, and it's a new release. So maybe I'll see if my library wants it. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna take the dog for a walk.